relaxed and paying attention.
Tell them again there. Oh, welcome back to 21st Century Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Bob Hieronimus. Our executive producer and research assistant is Laura Kortner. And our engineer, who runs this train at about 322 miles an hour, is Anita Brockington. Our guest this hour is another old friend and Baltimore icon, Loretto Gubernatis. I first met Loretto back in the 1980s when she asked me to paint a car for one of her films. I covered that VW Bug with the eye in the triangle and the American symbolism, and I called it E Pluribus Unum. And then it was auctioned off as a fundraiser, and I wonder whatever became of that car. I must ask Loretto. Maybe she knows what happened to it. But first, let me introduce her to you. Are you sitting up straight out there? Okay, eyes straight ahead. You shouldn't be chewing. Yeah, you can chew gum, but that's about it. Loretto Gubernatis is a filmmaker and author of 22 books. My gosh, when my family here, of 3 people here, we only have put out about 8 to 10. She's one person. She's put out 22 books, including the End Things series. She has won 15 Telly Awards for her television productions, including the documentaries on the Baltimore Fire of 1904. And Billie Holiday, she is the owner of McDonagh Davis Associates and the HanBuryCross True Vision YouTube network channel. She is a graduate of UMBC with a major in writing and a minor in film. She's joining us tonight to talk about one of her novellas being turned into a screenplay, and we'd like to do a wide-ranging interview full of inspiration for our listeners to be as actively involved as Loretto is in volunteer work for her community. Remember, look, here's rules and regulations for Dr. Bob, okay? Most important things that you can do, in my opinions, is prayer, meditation, prayer, the deity. Speak to the deity. Let him speak to you. Then you got to listen and meditation. But what's more important than even any of that? Helping others, serving others, without looking for making a buck or whatever. That is the key. And that's what's been lost, especially during this administration of you-know-who. Okay. Now, she's joining us again to talk about that. So, are you there, Loretto?
Yeah, Bob,
okay,
I'm here.
There you are. Whatever happened to that painted VW Bug?
Rick, thanks for the introduction. Rick Hammontree's mother won it.
Rick Hammontree's mother. Let's put them on.
But listen, I just want to say, years ago, I followed the advice of a dame named Rebecca Hofberger, and I'm so honored to be following Dame Rebecca Hofberger tonight. It's just such an honor. You, Rebecca, and I go back a long time.
There's only one of her, and I'm telling you,
Right.
she is a world-renowned. She is so highly regarded by so many people that I consider extremely important.
Right,
has changed, and she's
I'm
helped.
so honored to call her a friend.
Yes.
She's been so supportive. But I would like to start talking about another ideal woman that's been important in my life, and that's Dr. Joanne Martin.
Okay.
She's the CEO of the National Great Blacks and Wax Museum, and her husband and her husband Elmer Martin are the saints of North Avenue. That's all I can tell you. They kept that museum up there, and I work for it right now on a grant from the Baltimore Youth Works and the Baltimore Children's Fund Youth Foundation. And this summer has been such a trial for us to put this video production stuff we do together with the virus on, and we have a crew of kids, docents that are training to do the tours of the museums, and then normally we would videotape them and then make a little documentary about it. So we couldn't get together, and I'm so proud. The teacher, Mary Myers, I ordered green screens. We sent them to the kids. Mary took them around by hand, and I did a tutorial and by phone and email directed these kids to shoot them their video on cell phones. And then they sent everything to me, and we edited together, and the foundation was really thrilled with it all. But I'm so proud of those docents and children and the teachers and the staff at the Blacks and Wax Museum, because we have all been in this pandemic together, and we really did just come through this, And so kudos to Dr. Joanne Martin.
Dr. Joanne Martin. We gave her 22 kudos. Is this correct?
Yes.
Good.
Many, many kudos.
Well, actually, we'll give her 10 more. Okay?
Right. You should have her on your show and interview her. It's fascinating woman.
Maybe, certainly we might. Now, you are developing this into a screenplay.
Well, the book, it was called The Second Coming of Chris. There's a sword at the end that makes it look like a T, but it does say C-H-R-I-S if you look at the cover. And so forever it has always been about Christ coming back as a woman. Mm-hmm. And however, I started writing this in 1979. I had watched a film by Irvin Wallace called The Word, and I was inspired. It was the Epistle of James that they thought might have been Jesus' real writing, and I was inspired to write the Gospels according to Mary Magdalene, which I wrote, and it was a short story, and I had published it, and and it just grew and grew. And when we are in Fells Point, we had the Church St. Michael's that had this huge angel there, 12 feet high. So it just kind of grew and became a murder mystery in Fells Point, and then it became the Gospels was incorporated into it. But I republished it in 212, and now I'm republishing it again because I have to update it to 224 for the next first female president, who will be the second coming. And can I tell the plot? Because there's no point. People won't understand. The plot is that for 2,000 years there's this box that's been going around, and it's, the murder, decapitations, whatever, and they finally get to what the mystery is that in the box is not what they thought might have been the head of Christ, but it's the crown of thorns, and the DNA of the blood on the crown is what they're going to use to bring Christ back in the modern technological age, but this time as a woman.
Okay.
That's the whole story.
So this was about 20 years before Dan Brown.
Absolutely. He was 8 years old. But, I mean, that
well, let's put him under arrest for taking...
Well, somebody did sue him, but they did. That's not what it's about. You do the Kabbalah. You receive to share. The more you share, the more you receive. So right. I received from Irvin Wallace the idea. Mm-hmm. But I always contribute. I always attribute who I was inspired by, So I don't know who he was inspired by, but I'm sure he wasn't inspired by my novel. He was inspired by this concept that's out there universally for everybody,
Sure. Now, let's back up and start at the beginning. Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Dublin, Ireland. And I went back 4 times before this pandemic in the last year and a half, and it was wonderful going down the streets where I grew up. My mother had always she was a writer, and she had filled my head with fairies and leprechauns. It was a fantastic childhood there. I remember I had a great memory, so I have what they call a photographic memory, so I remembered everything and every story, because she passed away when I was 14, and I kept all of her writings for years, and then I finally... My husband, whom you knew also, Lou Gubernatis, actually accidentally burnt the bag I kept all her writings in. He put it in the garbage. And so I had to rewrite her stuff. Now, some stuff she had published, but I learned to be a writer from rewriting her work. And then, of course, I had all the ghost stories, as Rebecca said. Some are coming in dreams. Robert Louis Stevenson's whole Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was a dream. So I've had many, many wonderful dream stories. And then, of course, walking around the streets of the Portobello, which is where George Bernard Shaw was born and lived, and where Barry Fitzgerald, he was 2 streets away from where I grew up. So that's the inspiration for all the ghost stories. And
how old were you before you?
I came over here when I was. I was 8, but in March, and then I turned 9 in April.
And did you know much about what George Bernard Shaw and Barry Fitzgerald? Did you,
absolutely, and my life is magical, mystical, and in circles. Okay, because My grandfather was born on 36 Sing Street, 3 doors down from where George Bernard Shaw's museum and where he was born, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they were born the same year, and so they knew each other, okay? Now, my mom grew up hearing all the stories about this. That's why she got inspired to be a writer through George Bernard Shaw. But I went back last year. I knocked on that door, and lo and behold, this lovely young girl named Maura Kennedy, who was a student at Trinity College, opened the door and let me go into the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And right then and there, I got this concept for the idea for a screenplay, which would be based on George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, which was My Fair Lady, which would have been this young reporter coming to investigate, and an old grumpy guy's in the house, and so she changes him into a free-spirited thinker. So that whole idea for that story popped in my head as I stood in my old grandfather's old house,
Yeah.
And so I felt that's a gift. When things come to you like that, that's the spiritus mundi, that's coming from a place that everybody can feed into it, but a lot of great work is in there. And sometimes that's a joy, that's a gift from God or a treasure that it pops in your head. And luckily I know how to write, so I can execute it,
Well, I've only been to Ireland once, and it was, of course, Dublin. I really wanted to our family really wanted to get all the way over towards the west, where some of the great poets, etc., were in Ireland. Living in Ireland.
Well, this time out, I went to Sligo. My cousin Brian McDonagh is part of the Dervish group, and they just won the BBC Lifetime Achievement Award for Irish country, the true music of the country, and they live in Sligo. So I did go see William Butler Yeats' grave, and I videotaped a lot of stuff while I was there. I did a show called On the Road. I sent it, I think, to Laura.
Yes, I watched it.
If you want to have a look at that, you can see all of that.
Well, I did. I really enjoyed that, and another one about that you've won awards for, dealing with Ireland and the wonderful what was being done to it by England with its people, etc. I'm trying to remember the name of that one you did.
Well, I do want to say the one that I won an award for from Baltimore Fire of 1904, that was a great joy for me because Lou and I worked on that together. And we worked with Dr. Pete Peterson, who was the dean of Johns Hopkins at the time, and one of the deans at the time. And he had written a book about the Baltimore Fire of 1904, and his book was published by the Maryland Historical Society. So part of this documentation was that I got to take Thomas Alva Edison's original footage of the Baltimore Fire of 1904, and I got to edit it.
Whoa!
I got to put music on it and sound effects, and that I was so honored. The Historical Society allowed me to use it and to do that, and so I think that had a lot to do with us winning the silver tally on that,
Mm-hmm.
But I used to say I could die happy after that because to get to edit that great person's footage, was really something. So.
Well, congratulations on that. We got to take our first break right now, but
sure.
We're going to find out a little bit more about when you came to America and what your life was like here, and of course your neighborhoods. And I got to especially ask you about the great mystery of Armstead Gardens, which my very dear closest friend in the whole world was Paul Trantner. Paul Trantner.
Oh, I know him.
Yes, he was vice president of the AUM, the school that I founded that got approval from.
Passed away.
Yeah, and he passed away. But we'll be back in just a few minutes with our guest Loretto Gubernatis talking about her dozens of book titles and other movies, etc.
Hi, this is Barbara Hancock. I'm an internationally acclaimed ceremonial teacher, author, and a Mayan calendar researcher. And I've written, for example, Revelations of the Ruby Crystal, The Pleiadian Agenda, and the Mayan Codes. I also have taught at sacred sites throughout the world. And my website is www.handclow2012.com. Thank you for joining Dr. Bob Hieronimus on 21st Century Radio.
Thank you. Welcome back to 21st Century Radio with our guest, Loretto Gubernatis. And we're not only talking about her book titles, but her movies, etc. And we're finding out more about her as she became an American and came to America. What was the year you came to America?
I came in 1958.
1958. Okay. Now, when did you become interested in filmmaking?
Well, I was 6 years old, and my mom took me to see a movie that she thought was called Tarantula. But it was actually Tarantula.
Oh, yes.
And it was John Ager, her favorite movie star. So we went in, and it was about this giant spider. And my mom, I kept saying, it's real, it's real. And she kept saying, no, it's special effects, it's not real. My mom was such a fantastic teacher. Like, after it was over, she investigated to find out. And then she told me, she said, you were right, it was real. They did use a real spider. And she told me how they did it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I was fascinated from then. And one of the great joys of my life was because she loved John Ager. And I became friends with John Ager. And he and his wife, Loretta, I was his Loretto, she was his Loretta, and he passed away, but he would do the Fanix festivals, and he would, he would be talking about Tarantula, this movie that had inspired me as a small child. And when I went back to this December, last Christmas, I went to see the movie Last Christmas in that same movie theater, and I felt my mom and dad's presence with me all through that movie. And that movie was so beautiful. I love that movie, Last Christmas. But that Stella Theater is now a posh movie theater where you can order food at your seat while you watch a movie theater. So I'm lucky all those sites that I grew up in are still there. And my babysitter, I used to visit her. She was still alive. She just passed January of this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lillian Butler was her name. And her house went up on the market, which is 2 doors from my house, for £466,000, right? When we lived in them, they were like a tenement, you know? And so it's all been gentrified and a lot of college kids and students there. But I have a lot of family there, so I do go back and I have a wonderful family of my own. I have 6 children. They're all wonderful. One, Angela, is a marine biologist, and Bridget is a teacher in New York. She's written a book. And Christine is an artist, ChristineShavis.com. She does commissions. My daughter, Deborah, is on the phone right now listening and worrying with me, and I'm so proud of her. She should be given the Mother of the Year award because last year, just on my birthday, my little grandson Mason was born, and she went through hell to have this baby, and he was born with needing 2 heart surgeries.
Oh.
And so anyway, he's made it through a whole year, and he's strapping and hearty and hale, and she deserves a Mother of the Year award for that. But so that's Mason, and then my grandson Donovan is his older brother, and then Chrissy the artist has Anna, and then I have Joey, who is the musician and an inventor, and he lives in California, and then my son Kevin, he has written a book. It's like kind of Lord of the Rings kind of thing. It's about the White Wolf. I thought Zoe might like that. It's called The White Wolf in the Darkness. But that's Kevin, and so they're all hale and hearty and doing well, and I'm blessed. But I believe in Khalil Gibran's quote, "Our sons and daughters are not our sons and daughters. They are life's longing for itself, and so they don't belong to us. They belong to the world, to the universe."
Yeah, I
and
agree with that.
I've always tried to raise them that way, but I'm a very crazy kind of mother, so I'm not your typical mother, you know.
Well,
it's been hard for them.
I'm not your typical artist. I'm just, we're all not typical. We're very atypical these days. Now,
you go all the way back to Hollandtown. I remember your history.
Good old Holland. We always called it Hollandtown. And, of course, it was Highlandtown. Well, what was life like in America compared to Ireland?
Well, when we first got here, we like in Ireland, we had no TV. We only had the radio, and my dad rode a bicycle. And so when he came to America, he buys a $500, secondhand car, and he's ecstatic. He feels like he's a millionaire,
Mm-hmm.
And my mom was so proud to have a refrigerator, so that cultural difference was one. But sadly, they wound up in Armstead Gardens, as we just mentioned. That was first it was Baltimore Street, and then it went to Armstead Gardens, and that was like stone floors. It was very similar to the house I grew up in Ireland, 4 rooms and stone floors. But it was like a ghetto in a way. It was like, I didn't see that at the time when I lived there, but they wanted to get out as fast as they could. Mm-hmm. And they finally wound up about a year and a half later on in Irvington, which is where I went to St. Joseph's Monastery and grew up mostly in Irvington. And that's where Lou lived. Lou lived about 3 blocks away from me, and so we met because we were in Irvington. And we were married 46 years when he died.
Now,
so
can we go back to
kids.
Can we go back to Armstead Gardens here?
Sure.
It's an unusual place. Bob, my dear friend Paul Tratner, spent a lot of time there, and there was a time around 20, 30 years ago that you just couldn't go into the gardens, could you? Didn't you have to have some kind of permits or live there?
I'm not sure about that because it was really low income. I mean, honest to God, our rent was $12 a month. Oh. So you might be thinking of something else, but the actual neighborhood that was called Armstead Gardens, mm-hmm. I believe was a low income housing place. But, I want to say Paul Tratner was a magician.
Yes, he was.
As well, and he created those great mazes, the friend
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I just want to make sure I mentioned John Carrington, because Rebecca had introduced us, and John Carrington has been my magician and partner on the Magic Box for years. I call him the magician in my life. He's real, and Paul Tratner was his good friend. But John Carrington does the Eye on Baltimore show still, and the Magic Box, we still produce them. We're still together after all these years. So, and it's johnthewiz.com. You can find him out there. But I believe in this day and world, we need magic in our life. We need magicians in our lives. And I think that this terrible thing we've been through has brought out the angels of mercy and charity and hope in a way that we wouldn't have gotten it if it didn't happen. But we're seeing the good in people while we struggle through this, where people are struggling to help each other. Mm-hmm. And I call that magic. And I think we're blessed in a very strange way with this virus.
When did your mom...
I didn't mean to go so far afield from Armstead Gardens, but can I just say before, my whole thing with this book had been that a woman would be in power. And I was inspired by a mayor in Salem. Actually, my character is born in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, moves to Nazareth and grows up and then goes to Salem, where Kimberly Driscoll is the still current mayor of Salem. She was the first mayor ever elected in Salem, if you can imagine, Salem, Massachusetts. And she was elected in 2005, and we covered her then, and she's still mayor now. She was reelected 2017. 4 terms they reelected this woman. So she was an inspiration about the woman in politics, but it's not Kimberly, just so you know. But I wanted to be a Jewish politician, and she will come out of Salem. And I was trying to think of a Jewish last name that nobody else had because I don't want. So I came up with Chilberg. Christina Chilberg is it, and I'm with all these women's groups. Like I was the founder and program director, one of the founders and program director for Maryland Film Women Film in Maryland. I brought it to Maryland and helped work on the bylaws and everything. And then I am currently the vice president of media relations for the Clearinghouse on Women's Issues. And the Clearinghouse on Women's Issues has been around for 40 years, and there's some great women. Dr. Sue Klein and Eleanor Schmiel were involved in Ms. Magazine. Connie Cordovilla, sorry if I say your name wrong, Connie. She's in charge with the National Organization of Women in Virginia. Sue's daughter, Sherry, she keeps the website going and keeps everything up. I've been doing video for them for years. It's all up on their site. And this organization, these are the mothers, Holly Joseph, Linda Sahili, Megan, and the wonderful civil rights lawyer, Janet Lim. These are the women whose shoulders that some of the young women today are standing on. I want young women to come to this organization and these other women's older organizations and really try to support them. And don't forget to vote, of course. But these women are powerful women who have been struggling for years to get to where we are. And we should not forget them because this now, Me Too movement has come out of the media world. But it's clearinghouseonwomensissues.org or womensclearinghousissues.org. I get it mixed up all the time, but CWI.org. It's the Clearinghouse on Women's Issues. And I really want to put that out there. And the other organization is the Maryland Women's Heritage Center. I'm one of the founding mothers. And we had a facility downtown on Lexington Street, and we lost that. But we have a new facility, I want to tell everybody, in Baltimore. We're not going to say where yet. And that's Jill Moss Greenberg and Linda Shevitz were the founders of this great Maryland Women's Heritage Center years and years ago. And now they're still there. And I'm their videographer, and we've done a show called Her Story, where we archive all the older women. Some have passed since, and that's been my joy, to archive this, to preserve the legacy of all these women. So if you go on these sites, you'll see videos about the women who are struggling to make things happen. And that's the Maryland Women's Heritage Center.org and the clearinghousonwomensissues.org. And my good friend Linda Mahoney is part of that. She's the emeritus president of Maryland Now. And I've gotten awards and citations from all these organizations, so I'm very proud to be involved with them. And they don't know anything about this screenplay or book because I don't really talk about my books too much to them, So I'm hoping they get a big kick out of this book.
But when did you start writing?
Well, I started to write. I had been doing my diary and poetry before my mom died. Then my mom died when I was 14, and for 6 years I kept all of her writing in this brown paper bag, and because she was a very humble woman. But anyway, I read them over and over, and then when I was pregnant with my first daughter, Angela, I was 7 months pregnant, and I told my dad, I said, look, I want to get my mom's work published. Can I take them, have them, and do something with it? And he said, sure, go ahead. I brought him home that night and put him in a bassinet because I was trying to read him to Lou, and he was like, yeah, mamsy-pamsy stuff, He was a typical guy. But anyway, next morning he picked it up and took it to the garbage, and that was that. So my first baby, I know she was low weight. I was devastated for 2 months. I had lost my mother all over again, And after she was born, I was trying to write in my diary what a joy it was that she was born. And all of a sudden I started writing the stories that my mother had. I realized I had remembered everything. So at first I started writing her stories, and I learned enough from her that I was able to get into college and exam out of English, right? And I was able to take 22 credits in a year and take playwriting classes. And if I took writing classes, I got A's. So I wrote a piece to her saying, Dead, she taught me how to write, because she never graduated high school. And that she taught me how to write. I really got that degree from my mother. I thought I already knew it all, because I learned a whole lot of things in college, so I do advise taking up the curriculum. But I really felt that she taught me everything about writing. She taught me how to do plays, all the formats I had remembered from reading her writing. And then after I was in college, when I was writing her stories, and I got hers out, then I found my own voice, and I love the voice I finally found, which is, it's kind of a little fun. I love my own writing. I don't write to make money, okay? I enjoy reading my stories, and I like T.S. Eliot and some of the big writers. I loved Edgar Allan Poe, whom I must give a plug out to Lynn Barnes, the great painter who was in Maryland and now lives in Florida, who does all these fantastic Poe paintings. Look her up, Lynn Barnes. Anyway, so, Edgar Poe and all of that, I read James Joyce, I read Virginia Woolf, so I thought, well, I like my stuff. I guess I'm okay, But then if I enjoy my writing and I read it and it amuses me, then that's the solution. That's all I need,
Tell us
it would be nice if people bought the books.
Tell us about Dragons and Things for Children. I want to make sure we get this in and some of the others because we're going to be running out of time.
Dragons and Things for Children. The adult version, because I wrote this big book. Rebecca Huffberger bought my first two books, Dragons and the Angels and Things book. Matter of fact, Rebecca wrote the preface in Angels and Things where she said, as the roomie had this to say, so does Loretto Gubernatis. I was like amazed that she made that remark in my book, Angels and Things. But in Dragons and Things, the idea was to bring literature to a level that children could understand, like Othello the Ox, so that when they got into high school, they would be somewhat familiar with those terms, those names, if they had to do Shakespeare. That would, like Baby Billy and Little Tina is all about James Joyce, Mm-hmm. And so Virginia and Nebo is all about Shirley Jackson, one of my favorite female writers. I don't think she ever got her. She wrote The Haunting, which has been remade as a movie. She wrote Bird's Nest. She wrote Life Among the Savages, but unfortunately she passed away when she was young, as my mother did. So I just like to use these great other writers to try to make stories for children that they can learn something about T.S. Eliot and James Joyce and Virginia Woolf before they get into really hardcore literature. Jeremiah Peabody that's J. Alfred Prufrock, and the children can't read that poem, but Jeremiah Peabody is a cute little character, So that's the children's stories. And then somebody said to me, I think it was Rebecca, you have to tell people what this is about because they're not just going to get it. Some people have never read those books. And so the one for adults is with an introductory chapter to each of the children's stories telling them what writer that they're emulating, So I think it's a book that that adults can read to their children and enjoy themselves as well.
Well, we'll take a break here. And when we return, we'll continue on. We know that you want to talk about UMBC and that part of your learning, or get into your first film.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do one of those. Okay, we'll be back on 21st Century Radio with Loretto Gubernatis talking about her books, titles, and films, and other things. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Louise Harrison. I've just written a book called My Kid Brothers Band, also known as The Beatles. I hope you may enjoy it. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. And you're listening to 21st Century Radio with Dr. Bob Hieronimus. Cheerio.
Wonderful to hear her voice again. George Harrison's sister. Isn't that? Well, we had such a good time with her, didn't we? Yeah. Okay. Now, welcome back to 21st Century Radio with our guest, Loretto Gubernatis. Almost got that right.
That's your Highland Town coming out in you.
Well, I only walked through Highland Town a couple of times, especially when it was Easter time, and we used to always go to Highland Town to go and buy our Easter outfits.
Yep. Listen, I don't want to forget to say that with the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, I've met a lot of people. One was Dr. Claire Parkinson, and she is a NASA scientist, and I had given her one of my books, and she read it, The Angels and Things, and she was like, oh, this is really, really great. All you need is an editor. And then she agreed to edit one of my children's books, which is called Polar Pals at Christmas Time. And I was so honored to have had her, whom I met through the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, and I have nominated her for the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame and the National Hall of Fame. So I'm so proud to be working with her, and she did allow one of my videos to be in the NASA presentation. And Dr. Mary Cleave, who is the first Maryland astronaut in space, and the Heritage Center, we did a 2-hour piece on Cokie Roberts, which is, they can buy that from the Heritage Center, Maryland Women's Heritage Center, .org, their website. You can go on their shop and help support them. And just the Clearinghouse and Women's Issues, I've met a number of wonderful people there, and it's womensclearinghouse.org and MarylandWomen'sHeritageCenter.org and GreatBlacksInWax.org. So I want to make sure I get that all out there.
Well, you got it all out there, but we got a lot more information to go here, so I want to focus now.
Yep.
What was your... Oh, wait, we haven't had time here to get to your writing into film. When did that happen?
Well, getting into the film business was when I met you, because at the UMBC, and I have actually done a half hour on Dr. Freeman Habrowski, who is a wonderful, wonderful man, and I met him through Black and Wax Museum. But when I was at UMBC, I noticed that the kids in the film department and the kids in the theater department didn't know anything about each other, and each one had to do like a project, right, a film, and they were getting their moms and dads to act in it. So I created what was called the Interdisciplinary Directory, which helped the filmmaker students find actors in the theater department. You know, so it was like a good reciprocity. And in the course of doing that, I did a big event there. UMBC let me throw this event to open my agency, which was McDonagh Davis Associates, and I was amazed. John Waters came. Of course, that put me on the map. When John Waters came, everybody was interested. I'll never forget him for that. But he did cast a lot of my people into Hairspray. Okay, so that was a big deal. And then this filmmaker named Brad Mays, whom he was the first man who, like I said, you want to co-produce, you know, not cast or, you know, do what they call the babysitting jobs in the industry. So I co-produced Stage Fright with him, and he was the director, and that's when we met you. And we met you because he knew Rick Hammontry, and Rick Hammontry knew you, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the Volkswagen, was painted for the movie Stage Fright, which was rejected by the Maryland community at the time. I mean, the Maryland Film Commission just said, nice try, but the National Foundation for the Arts in New York invited the film to the Berlin Film Festival. So
well, that
well,
happened.
We must be good.
Well, no. Well, the thing is this happens a great deal in Baltimore. If I had to exist in Baltimore economically, as just being an artist, it wouldn't work. There are so many artists that are just dead broke, and it's really a shame. So I'm very glad you're always working towards helping these people out, because it's very depressing when you do a mural in Baltimore, and this has happened to me and a number of people, and then when I wanted to show this one mural that to my son at one time, which was down in, but it was on the way to Fort McHenry. This was a All-America City mural that won so many awards, was well known around the country, and it got painted over. It got painted over. The guy, they didn't call me. They didn't. I mean, this is the kind of thing that happens in Baltimore.
Yeah, but you know, that's why I made you be a guest on that show, to be an artist. I've done 5.5 hours with you now, Bob, preserving some. Well, you've got to preserve now, but I mean, making sure that you're out there and what you say is out there. And you know, Brad Mays was responsible for bringing, you know, me to understanding. See, he owned his own equipment and everything, so I really realized how to make a film happen without money, and that's how I'm able to sustain myself this time, because we're not supported by people. They don't want to pay us. I mean, the women's organizations I work for are paying me. Blacks and Wax has always paid me. Rebecca Hoffberger always paid me. But when you work for free, for some people, they want you to work everywhere for free, you know? And that's fine, because as long as we're putting out that work. But my thing is to preserve the legacy. It's like the artwork that went at Johns Hopkins, and the Lexington Market was where you and I first really met, because I did the screenplay Trash Man, and I wanted to use your Lexington Market mural.
Did you ever see the Lexington Market mural down at the Lexington Market, though? You couldn't see it. They hung it up.
Oh, I know.
I know, but that's the same. Wait a second. Listen, I want to talk about, this is the kind of thing artists go through. You do award-winning works, you get national attention, and in this town, your stuff can be wiped out and nothing happens. So, so that, that's the reason why a lot of people, when they come to me and they want to be an artist, and I have to let them know, are you ready to work your ass off? And do you have enough money? But you're going to have to make money somehow. It's a struggle. So, I've seen so many sad things happen to other artists and their works. And the sad thing is Baltimore doesn't deserve them. It really doesn't. Not the people that are in charge. because they don't take care of things. They do not look out for these things, and artists are stepped on all the time. There, I said my piece. Because
right. Well, I agree with you, but my daughter Christine loves you and Rebecca, and she's a struggling artist, and I keep telling her, just hang in there, because the quote that I use for my show, the show's called To Be an Artist at 40, and that's from Brad Mays, who had in the movie said, to be an artist at 20 is to be a dreamer, but to be an artist at 40 is to be an artist, because you've had to stick it out, and it cannot be about the money. And as soon as I decided it wasn't about the money, I've done 5,000 half-hour television shows. That's more than Oprah's whole seasons, right? All on almost no money, but I reciprocity that the actors all come for free. I give them the demo reel of the show for, because I can't pay them. So everybody's working in a reciprocity kind of way, not in the for free way. We are all doing something for each other. Every show I've done, I may be the only person shooting, editing. I do all the work of it. But I'm in front of the camera, a whole load of people helping me make it happen, So everybody's working for free. But imagine being able to do 5,000 half-hour shows with no money, just getting everybody to work free. And that's what I have done. And some of those shows have won Telly Awards, And the one I would like to promote right now is called The Doll Show. And it's about getting kids to get their favorite dolls and find a country they want to know more about. And then we do the whole half hour on that country. If it's Italy, whatever, we do the map, we do the geography. And I put it out there. Nobody wants to support. I tried a GoFundMe page and got nothing. And it's like a educational, geographically interesting travelogue kind of thing, and then fun for kids, because it's boys and girls can bring their favorite toy or doll and talk about their favorite country. So I put that out there. If anybody wants to support and fund the doll show, get in touch with me. But you have to have as Rebecca knows, that you're one of the greatest artists in Baltimore. So,
well,
you can't let them...
Well, it's not.
You mentioned George Harrison's sister. I covered that whole event for you. Remember?
Yes, yes. Well, we have obviously a lot of good friends and that kind of thing. But what I have learned over the years is you must be extremely careful who you work with, and always stay on top of the meetings that go to, especially the art meetings that most artists don't go to. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's really sad. It really is. And I'm bringing this up because there is a big issue about some of my best murals. The Lexington Market mural is called also E Pluribus Unum, and it's known everywhere else, but not Baltimore. Mainly because it was hung in a dark place, no one could see it. And even though we complained, made no difference. It really didn't make any difference. So, but okay. We've got very few minutes left. So what do you want to talk about now? What do you want to do for the next 4 minutes?
I would say, ladies, women, men, everybody, get out there and vote. You have to make the change. You have to be part. If you're not part of the, don't change. You're not part of. You have to be part of the solution. Get out and vote. Support these women's organizations that have been around for years, like Dr. Martin at the Blacks and Wax Museum. That's on North Avenue and Broadway right now. They were invited to go downtown, and be in the harbor and have all that. If they toned down some of the exhibits, but true to their heart, they said no and stayed up there. And they have to struggle for funding, where all these fancy modern things are getting all this money dumped on them. Support this National Great Blacks and Wax Museum, because it is a fantastic historical legacy, a jewel, a crown, and the crown of Baltimore. And, go up there. And Dr. Martin and her husband, when they got married, and they had the idea for the museum, they had 4 sculptures, and their choice was to buy a brand new, beautiful house, as all newlyweds want to do, or do the museum. And she chose for the museum. And years later, when they were in a struggle, he mentioned to her that they were struggling, and she was ready to give up her engagement ring. Okay? So that's the kind of passion I'm at right now. It's like they have not gotten, just as they have not gotten their accolades from the city of Baltimore the way they should. And they're they were given national status. So they're not Madame Truffaut's thing. This is historical archiving, and the kids that do the docent training are wonderful, beautiful kids. And so I really say, support your local artists. Support Bob Hieronimus.
That's right.
Do not take away the mural from Lexington Market. You know, I wrote the screenplay, Trash Man, based on that mural.
I didn't know that.
Chesapeake Bay Monster, remember? And Ethel Innes was with us at that time. And you and I, back then, that's, 25 years ago, 30 years ago? We were visionaries trying to get a beautiful thing done. Schaefer was going to be in the movie. You know, Bob Turk was going to be in the movie. And nothing ever happened to it, you know? And the only thing I say on a positive note is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was a screenplay that sat around for 25 years. Kirk Douglas, a famous actor, tried, and it didn't happen for long. But when it happened, it happened. So to each its own, to each its time. You know, there is a season and time for everything. Roll with the flow. You know, as I follow the Tao this way, just go on the middle path, you know, try to stay. And with the artists, the problem is right brain, left brain. Right brain, you know, the academic versus the artistic. And unfortunately, artists can be so one way that they're not academically inclined to try to get the funding to go do the things. More power to all those artists out there who have gotten the funding, who do get the funding. I'm honored that National Black and Wax Museum was able to get me the funding to go ahead and do some work. And I'm hoping people will support the museum, support CWI, support Maryland Women's Heritage.
And with that, we got to go. We are over time. I'm so sorry. Thank you for joining us, Loretto. Talk to you later.